In October 1962, the world held its breath as it teetered on the edge of nuclear war. This wasn't the stuff of Hollywood drama, but a harsh reality we faced during the peak of the Cold War. An American U-2 spy plane soaring high above the Caribbean skies made a chilling discovery. Soviet nuclear weapons were being stationed in Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. This revelation sent shockwaves around the globe. The stakes had never been higher. The world was caught in a vice of tension and fear, as governments and citizens alike grappled with the unimaginable prospect of nuclear catastrophe. From Washington, D.C. to Moscow, from London to Beijing, the grim shadow of potential annihilation loomed. This was the onset of the Cuban Missile Crisis, a tense standoff that put humanity's existence in jeopardy. A single misstep, a single miscalculation, could have spelled disaster. The world was on the brink, with the fate of millions hanging in the balance. As the world watched nervously, Kennedy and Khrushchev engaged in a deadly game of chess. The stakes? No less than the potential for nuclear catastrophe. President Kennedy, armed with a cool head and a keen strategic mind, made the bold decision to enforce a naval blockade around Cuba. This was not an act of war, he argued, but a necessary measure of defense. On the other side of the board, Premier Khrushchev, a seasoned player in the game of global politics, responded with defiance. He saw the blockade as a blatant provocation, a direct challenge to the might of the Soviet Union. And so the Soviet ships soldiered on, undeterred by the American blockade, escalating tensions to a fever pitch. Each move, each decision, was a calculated gamble. A single misstep could tip the scales towards a nuclear fallout. The world held its breath as the two superpowers danced around each other, each awaiting the other's next move. The game was far from over as the crisis deepened. For 13 nerve-wracking days, the world watched and waited. From October 16th to the 28th, 1962, the globe was gripped by the Cuban Missile Crisis. This was no ordinary diplomatic dispute. It was a nuclear standoff. The United States and the Soviet Union, two superpowers locked in a chilling dance. The stage was set, the actors in place, and the world was the audience to a drama that could have ended in nuclear annihilation. Let's delve into the key events of those 13 days. The crisis began when American spy planes revealed Soviet nuclear missile installations in Cuba. An emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council was called, and the world held its breath as the United States demanded the immediate removal of the missiles. Behind the scenes, secret negotiations were taking place. President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev were engaged in a high-stakes game of chess, each trying to outmaneuver the other without tipping the balance into war. The United Nations, led by Secretary General U Thant, played a crucial role in facilitating these talks, acting as an impartial mediator between the two superpowers. International pressure mounted, the world demanded peace, and the stakes were too high for either side to ignore. There was an understanding that this was not just a conflict between two nations, but a crisis that threatened humanity itself. Finally, after 13 days that shook the world, a resolution was reached. The missiles were removed, a potential catastrophe averted, and a sigh of relief echoed around the globe. The Cuban Missile Crisis left an indelible mark on the world and shaped the course of history. This tense 13-day standoff, a high-stakes chess game between two superpowers, finally saw its conclusion with the removal of the Soviet missiles from Cuba. This act was not just a physical withdrawal but a symbolic retreat from the brink of nuclear catastrophe. In the wake of this crisis, US-Soviet relations underwent a transformation. The world had come so close to a nuclear war that both superpowers recognized the need for improved communication channels. The establishment of a hotline between Washington and Moscow was a direct result of this recognition. This hotline, often dramatized as the Red Telephone, served as a direct link between the leaders of the two nations, a testament to the importance of dialogue in preventing conflicts. The Cuban Missile Crisis holds a significant place in the history of the Cold War, a period defined by ideological conflict and geopolitical tension. The lessons learned from this crisis are as relevant today as they were over 60 years ago. It underscored the destructive potential of nuclear weapons and demonstrated the importance of diplomacy, negotiation, and compromise in resolving conflicts. The Cuban Missile Crisis serves as a stark reminder of the destructive potential of nuclear weapons and the importance of diplomacy in resolving conflicts.